So, Pax,
Yes.
tell us your thoughts on 2042.
I haven't played it yet.
What are your expectations looking at these streams?
The stills that you posted the other night, I was surprised with how cartoony the characters looked.
Yes. So, dead-eyed shark man, rock frog. It's weird actually because the
That's
screenshot
evil.
because HDR is on that. I posted that picture of Rocky, and it tends to wash out the detail a little bit. The in motion, so the characters when you're selecting them have their own little kind of signature dialogue and expressions. They're actually really quite lifelike. It's quite impressive. But they put some effort into the kind of these little flavor animations. But in the game, it's obviously much more abstracted. So, I mean, to be honest, you're not supposed to be looking closely at people in the game, right? It's a bit weird, really, because you've got dozens of identical people running around in 128 player.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of
server.
the complaints from the beta. It's
Yeah,
difficult to
it's
see who
weird.
is who.
I mean, yes, you can obviously put slightly different camos and stuff on, but I mean, you don't know. Honestly, you don't notice at all. At all. I mean, you can, because they have some distinctive, like wingsuit person has the wingsuit, and kind of Russian bloke who drops the engineering stuff is slightly different in kind of he's a bit bulky and round shouldered. It's you can probably tell the specialist they are from silhouette, but you'd have to be looking, and you certainly it doesn't look like a lot of identical people. It looks like a lot of people. It looks like a lot of targets or friendlies
Yeah.
running around.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a Battlefield game, isn't it? So you're not doing
Not
like
like
you're basically firing
It is a
as soon
Battlefield
as you
game.
see a target, right? It's not.
And engagement ranges are quite long. People,
Yeah.
You
people
don't
knock
get to
close up.
drink in anyone's glory, no.
No,
It's like
exactly.
literally everyone could be identical, and you
Yeah.
wouldn't have noticed it already.
Yeah. Which if you go back to the other Battlefield games where you've got classes, everyone is one of 4 classes, so
true.
everyone looks like one of 4 character models, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Although, here is the big difference: they were different on each side. No one on the friendly side looked like anybody on the opposition side.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they've launched the game. I'm surprised they've launched the game with so few maps, large maps.
Yeah, so am I.
In the main modes, yeah.
It's quite poor from. I mean, I don't know what they're working on at the moment, but it's quite
weird, isn't it? Because they've
poor.
got a lot of maps in the sense that you've got the 6 extras from Portal, but for the modes they've introduced, you've got relatively few.
And obviously a bunch of them are rehashing the previous games, which I know they can't just lift them directly out. They would have had to have made them.
Well, that's the Portal maps, yeah. So that's half the maps in the game, I think, if I remember rightly, which are remakes, and they don't feature in the new game modes. They don't feature in campaign, breakthrough, or the other thing I keep forgetting the name of.
Hazard Zone.
That's the one.
I haven't because I haven't played. It's hard to get a sense from streams what the gunplay is like.
It's all right. Getting used to it now.
Guy at work, the one that I got playing New World, we were chatting about the other day. He played the open beta and said it was super squishy. He plays quite a lot of Tarkov, right? So, or has. So I guess.
So you're saying when you say squishy, you're saying what, long time to kill?
No. So that as in the guns just feel
a sponge.
Bits, like you don't get a good sense that you're actually firing the weapon.
There is supposed to be bloom. There is supposed to be bloom in the game that is obviously a bit of a bone of contention for some people at the moment.
Yeah, so people complaining about hit reg, absolutely.
Yeah, and you were saying, BJ, weren't you, that the recoils really ramps up?
Yeah, I started to get a bit more of a handle on that. That was a specific thing with the 416 surrogate, but it's particularly bad when you're stuck on the initial version with only the iron sights, because the iron sights are so bad in terms of obscuring your vision when you're ADS that the second you start recoiling, it'll obscure your target, which is fucking awful. So once you've got any of the, so you can work around it once you realise that's going to be the problem. So that's a thing. I'm not quite so anti it, but the big thing is obviously once you stop having to use the iron sights and you get things like the red dots, or if you're using a a magnifying scope, then you'll probably be working just on a couple of rounds per burst, or even going to single shot.
So the sense, I didn't really watch you Saturday when you were playing because I had it muted because obviously we were chatting in Discord, right? And so then I was running around doing crafting in New World. But when I was watching you on Friday, Tars, when you did your launch stream, obviously I don't know the maps at all, right? So you've got no real sense of location. But the general impression I had was there was lots and lots of running around, not even seeing anyone your own team, let alone opposition. Between contacts, it was very. So you don't get the sense of it being 128 players because everything's just so big.
It's weird because it doesn't feel like it's that size. It doesn't feel like when you used to play Battlefield previously in the older versions, and you had even 64 players or up to 128. It always felt like there was always people around. Whereas now, it's just like
what's that? I think it's weird. Battlefield 3. That's the map that's got like it's either a highway or like a railway line down at the bottom, and then it's got that like Middle Eastern village bit, sort of middle top.
End.
Yeah,
that's Battlefield 2, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. They remade it, but yeah. Okay.
And you've got anyway. The point is that villagey bit would be a clusterfuck, right? 9 times out of 10, all of the combat is focused around. I think there were like 2 or 3 cap points. There's one south of the village, one in it, and then one off, like to the eastern side, if you like. And you'd be constantly battling for, if your squad goes down, someone stay alive, because the enemy teams are always pushing in. So you could basically camp that area the whole game and just be rolling it backwards and forwards, right? Obviously, again, don't know the maps, right? I don't get the sense from what I've seen that there's really anything akin to that in the new maps.
There's a lot of open space.
Yeah,
too much.
So I think one of the things here is that we are out, because we haven't really played any Battlefield games for a little while now. We are out of touch with what a Battlefield game is like in terms of just the battlefield as a thing. And I think there's a few things that call out. And as big as the Call of Duty, as big as Verdansk was, the vehicles were relatively quite few and far between. So you were spending an awful lot of time on foot. So when you were getting into fights with people, it tended to be closer up. So you tended to notice what people were wearing. And to what Landy was saying about there's so many targets and it's all happening so fast that you don't really get to see what they are. I think one of those aspects of that is you're engaging at range just because the milieu is larger. And because it's larger, and because Battlefield, as a franchise going all the way back to the beginning, is so heavily vehicle orientated, not just like Jeeps and the equivalent of, but vehicles full stop. And I think the game designers make it as appealing and compelling a game from a vehicle driver / gunner perspective as they do all the infantry stuff. So if you have people that don't tend to be vehicle people, like we don't tend to be, we're running around on foot. And one of two things is going to happen. If you've not got a vehicle at the beginning, you're going to be having to run somewhere. And if you die and respawn back and the vehicles haven't started respawning, you're going to have to be running back. Or if you've got a more forward flag and you're spawning at that forward flag, well, so is everyone else. And then people are, generally speaking, running in a I was jokingly saying in a very Dune kind of way, there's just the mass infantry all running in a straight line from where they've spawned to the place that they're attacking. And whilst that's a lot different to the games we've been playing of late in the last couple of years, thinking back to more so the Battlefield kind of 2, 3, 4 kind of era, they were all like that. They were all like that in a big way. Beal and I were playing one of the Battlefield 3 rushed games, just as you crash landing actually last night. It got a bit frustrating because not that it was a badly done representation of what the game was like, but I was saying to Bill, the gameplay for those kinds of games and that kind of thing, what you do and what is acceptable as a game has changed, and we didn't realize it's changed because we started playing it like this. And I remember at the time not having a problem with that kind of gameplay, not even remotely. Now it feels like you're spawning, you're running forward, fighting until you die, respawning, running forward, and then you're just continuously running headlong at the brick wall, and the brick wall is capturing the next flag, so it unlocks the next tranche of things that you can remember. Rush is in a linear. You have to.
Yeah, it's very, and I think so. We had a version of this chat on the Sine Wave channel the other day, and I was saying, my recollection of Rush is that I really enjoyed it. It was a switch up from Conquest, and I liked the rolling progression, and you'd quite often get bits of the map that you didn't get in Conquest. So
Yeah.
there would be the bits that kind of lead into it, if you see what I mean, that would be off the spawn zone at either side or whatever. But one of the comments some of the guys were making was lots of those rush maps, probably especially in 3, as opposed to 4, because I think they improved it a bit in 4. But they're basically 2 lanes, right?
Yeah.
They're all 2-lane maps, and if you're not at A, you're at B, right? And it's not. There were some maps that I remember feeling like, actually, as the defender, you can camp them in spawn, and if they get out of spawn, then they're going to steamroller you. But on other maps, it would be okay. It's the third set of control points, whatever they're called, the things you got to blow up. If you camp them there, you can literally hold the whole of the team there because they are just natural choke points, right? So I think you're right.
It's funneled meat grinding, and whilst it did seem like a change up at the time, and as I say, I don't remember having a problem with it at all. For the, I don't know what, 20 minutes we played it, Bill, ish, something like that. I left that thinking, fuck me, I never want to play that game mode again. Just what you get out of an FPS game, or how we enjoy an FPS game now, it couldn't be further from that. And it kind of felt extremely dumb and unimaginative, and like there was no variety to it. You were literally running down a relatively thin funnel to the next set of flags, and because especially if you were attacking, we were all running into oncoming fire like all of the time, and the only way you make any progress is if there are people in front of you. It's a little bit First World War like. The only way you can progress is because the people in front of you get killed, and because they're getting killed, the bad guys can't be shooting at you at the same time. So you manage to get to, I don't know, the wall of a building in front, and then you're across the killing ground and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I give EA their dues that they've kind of, from a nostalgic reason, kind of introduced some stuff from the past, but outside of curiosity level, I don't see there being stuff that we're gonna stick at particularly.
But they switched up. They switched up Rush, didn't they, to the grand operations in 1 and 5? So that's almost like a natural progression of that, isn't it? Where
and I thought they were
more...
good. That was almost like Conquest mixed with Rush.
Yeah, exactly.
In a funny
that's
way.
what I mean. Yeah, so you've got that you've got the bigger maps, and you've got that sense of progression where you've got to hold both points simultaneously to push
What
on to the next.
what was the Second World War
step.
one? I forget. Was it 5?
5. Yeah, it's 5.
Yeah, so that was that was one of the big things about 5 I really did quite like. There was lots of things about that game I didn't like, but one of the grand operations thing, I thought that was
Yeah.
a really
and that's in
good.
2042 again, right? That mode, is that or not?
Don't
Yeah,
all
well, I haven't played it.
continue?
I haven't played the main mode because everybody in review has been slating it, basically saying, yeah, basically the things that you've been talking about, Harry, is that you pointed out from Tarz's stream earlier, which is that it's too unfocused. There's not enough people around. It's too empty. So we've been playing Breakthrough, which is obviously funneling people towards a couple of
Right.
points at a time in the
It's the
bigger
Rush
maps.
concept.
It's a Rush concept, but a bit less, single point.
Yeah, it's bigger. It's definitely bigger. If you like, play lanes that
areas.
you're.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's
with
not
so
as.
with regards to the big map style conquest stuff and Hazard Zone as well, what would you like to see them change or bring in?
What's Hazard Zone?
Hazard Zone's that one where you have to collect the drives and stuff.
Yeah, the battle royale esque.
Hazard Zone, I haven't played enough to judge it yet. I've actually
No.
quite enjoyed it the couple of times we played it. It probably still feels a bit empty. The bots are a bit lasery. I've got to be honest.
Yep. I agree with that one.
Because most of the time, or at least half the time we've been playing on it, it's apparently at night, and their vision is unworldly. So that's a bit.
They're a bit bullet spongy as well. So there was a time when we were coming up on the side of those crates when you asked me if you could res me. You came up on the back side of that crate. I mag dumped into the guy that got me and hit him a load of times. Don't know how many times, hit him a load of times, and he didn't go down. And I remember thinking, the fuck was that?
But that's the thing that Tarzan's talking about the questionable bloom as well as the recoil. Those two things together mean you can absolutely mag dump somebody and they don't go down.
So I don't know. I'm not bent out of shape. It's the very beginning, and I think they probably made some missteps, and I'm sure they'll course correct a bunch of it. I think like any game, like Andy said, when we started playing, just being rusty from playing this kind of game, and it is very different from playing Call of Duty. So it doesn't feel anywhere near as good as Call of Duty. So the whole kind of like how guns shoot and feel in your hands and recoil, and the sense of your just the feedback, be it sound, be it visuals, be it like the perception of recoil and stuff like that. Call of Duty is much better at that, much better than that. But it's a smaller scale game in many ways. I know there's a lot of players, and I know the map is quite big, but actually when you're getting down to the fight, it's probably you and another group, maybe a third group at once, so that you've only ever got like.
Be unusual to have more than about 16 of you involved.
Half a dozen to a dozen people
at
any one time. You're fighting in and around buildings, rooms, or something like that. So it's much more immediately interactive, if you see what I mean. Whereas Battlefield is nothing like that. Battlefield is, you feel there's no CQB, CQC around it. It feels like you are. There's a degree of separation between what you're doing and
that's it for me. So that's precisely the things that I'd complain about is the maps are too open. The stuff which, so there's no real, they don't feel like real spaces, to be honest. There's just basically, because there's no indoors. These things are supposed to have, they're supposed to be urban in some way, but anything which is indoors you can't go into, apart from like simple, really simple spaces like garages and really open areas inside which have long sightlines as well. So there's no close range stuff. You're constantly getting. So there's no room clearing. There's no sense of that CQB action. It's always medium range or longer.
Yeah, I've noticed that in the interiors, they're just very boxy, big rooms, long corridors, lots of stairs, and like you say, there's no
lots of verticality, open
tactics.
verticality. Yeah. Well,
I
no,
guess options for tactics in terms of, like you say, CQB stuff.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things there is, again, this is back to the Call of Duty thing. We are spoilt somewhat by the last version of Call of Duty that introduced a big play. Admittedly, it's only one map, but a big play area. Or well, okay, there was a couple of maps, but the bigger of the two was you could go into, let's say, 75 to 80% of the buildings. So obviously there was a bunch of buildings you couldn't get into, but you could go into the majority of them. And whilst there was lots of repetition of buildings, there was variety in the buildings, and the buildings, by and large, did feel like buildings indoors. May not have been lots of furniture around, although there was furniture and furnishings, but where there isn't in this game really. But one of the big differences, and this might be why it was, is you can't destroy buildings and shit in Call of Duty, where you can in Battlefield, and they might have had to simplify it to deal with the load around doing that.
You think all the Battlefield games you've ever played, how many of them have had furniture in any of the buildings? And then actually, how many of them have had buildings which are even enterable? You know, was it in 4 that with the map where the skyscraper falls down?
It's none really, but the fact is, you can't get away from it, that a lot of people have now, and we are a good example of it, never played Call of Duty games before, really, apart from campaign things, but online Call of Duty games. We spent a reasonable amount of time playing it. Tars is still playing it, and we've got used to that now. So then you go to something else that's never had it. Well, okay, but the world has kind of changed shape a little bit.
Yeah.
But it does go back to what I was saying in the beginning. You have vehicles in Call of Duty, but really, it's not a game about vehicles in any way, shape, or form. Whereas Battlefield has vehicles at its core, so it's making the game as vehicle friendly as it is infantry friendly. And that's just that just doesn't tend to be our playstyle. So we're forcing our playstyle, which is mainly infantry, onto a game which is going to be a mixed environment. And there's three things actually, which is going to make that painful. We're going to continuously be getting into situations where we're on foot and we're having to engage vehicles, and we're outmatched, and that is very painful. So that's going to happen. Secondly, the map has to be larger and more open because there's vehicles tooling around. So then we have to deal with that probably on foot. And lastly, because Battlefield have kind of hung their hat on the destructible landscape, which is a good thing. I think they just had to make it simpler, or keep it simple rather, so that it's easy to reform, destroy, break down without there being, bookshelves being flung all over the place and desk chairs and all the other sundry shit that you get in the other games. So I'm not defending the game because, I had a mixed experience last night. I'm not 100% sure how much I enjoyed myself, but it's like, well, the game, they're not the same game. Call of Duty and Battlefield, they're actually probably now further apart now than they've ever been. So to expect one to behave like the other, I don't think is. You're probably onto
I had a couple of comments I was gonna. So even if you think back to some of those 3-4 maps, which are, and I mean you're right in all of your comments there, but even some of those maps where you can't go into the buildings or they're very basic, they still had CQB, right? They still had bits of the map that were quite close in, and was that map where there's the big like radio antenna and there's the whole bit underneath it? Quite difficult to get vehicles in and around there, as I remember. Maybe them little dirt bike things, but you couldn't be rolling in an MBT down there. I think I might be wrong, but the point still stands, right? There were CQB bits of the map.
Yeah, so you could in that one, but obviously they were more vulnerable because you could get above around, and there was plenty of cover around the spawn point as well. So people could literally spawn in, be straight into cover, and then a tank would be a sitting duck basically.
I think
the other there. Sorry, I was just going to throw in about previous ones, not 5 and I didn't play 1, so I don't know. But in the earlier Battlefields, it tends to follow a trajectory of map release, where it was open maps first, and then they released more urban ones later. I don't know if they're planning on doing so. I don't know what their map concept is for this, how many more they're going to release. They've obviously done a few, but they've done more release than they usually do. We talk about the lack of variety in the main game modes, and that's true, but the actual number of maps which are actually released at the beginning is higher than usual.
It'll be interesting. So I certainly, and again, I played almost no 1. I did buy it, but I played almost none of it. Played more 5, but well, almost exclusively with you guys.
5 actually worked in urban terms, though, didn't it? If you think of some of those maps, there's proper urban sections in those.
Yeah. Thinking of that French, whatever it was, one in particular.
Ville. Yeah,
Ville. Yeah. But in
that
4,
one by the coast as well.
In 4, especially in 4, I put a lot of time into the tank. So my tank stats would be really quite high up, and then me and a Johnny, me and a Jinx, me and a Cavers, whoever it might be, did lots of 2-man tank combos. The classic, one of us is an engineer and is always out the back repairing or hopping out to repair when needed, blah blah blah. And you could, if you got a good run, you could be in a tank potentially for the whole round, but certainly for a big chunk of it, and literally be owning people. And then you need a bit of luck.
Dominating an area.
You need a bit of luck. You need infantry support. You maybe need a good helo or jet pilot to be, keeping their counterparts at bay. Blah blah blah. But that was definitely a thing that I did a lot of with those boys, and didn't do it at all, or very little in 5. Would we be okay? Cool, let's jump in a tank and do that. So it'd be interesting to see whether that's a thing that we can do as a squad or part of a squad. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. How's that going to work?
You can actually crew up 3 in a tank in this one, which is not something they've done before. But vehicles feel very dominant in the maps that we've currently got, for sure. All the vehicles, even things as simple as just the Hummer, are just, you can destroy infantry in ways that infantry can't counter. The infantry can counter vehicles like that, but there's no way another infantryman can kill infantry the same way a Hummer can. It's like we were doing it last night, like straight in, first night, kill 6 people in 5 seconds.
Just
nothing
too much
an
open ground. So
infantryman
the
can
open
carry
ground
can do
piece
that.
again, isn't it? Open ground.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to run from one area to another area, and you've got no cover to do so. You have to run across and just hope that no one shoots you, and that's the simple fact.
And how does because obviously the hard counter to Vix is in the old games being an engineer and having an RPG, right?
You can't one-shot them. Nothing. You can't one-shot. You can't one-shot anything.
Okay.
So they can kill you.
Well, there wasn't. Okay. So tanks, there was no one-shotting anything. You could obviously one-shot Hummers and stuff if you had like an anti-tank weapon, for sure.
Yeah, but you can't in this game.
I didn't shoot an AT weapon at a Jeep, so I don't know.
I've shot AT weapons at everything in the game. You can't one-shot anything.
So one of the things that we used to do an awful lot of, in both 2 and 3, is we used to consistently. We do one of 2 play styles. We'd either Zerg at the first set of flags. So forget rush type modes. I'm thinking more like conquest type modes. We'd either Zerg to the nearest flags that with everyone else that were the first ones to cap, and you'd either be on foot or you'd be in vehicles or riding on the people's vehicles or whatever. Or it felt like the other half of the time we would get in vehicles and flip round to the opposite side of the map, probably quite near their base, or at least to far-flung flags, and we'd go and cap them, and we'd traditionally be all together in our team of 5 or 6 or however many there was, and frequently, at least when we capped it, we would be first there and there would be no one around, and either we'd be going on from there to go and attack somewhere else, or sometime after we've captured it, the bad guys would start turning up in small numbers, and that was something we consistently did a lot of. And we had to travel to get there. We were doing the vehicle thing. We were very specifically not meeting people on the way, and going out of our way to make sure we didn't meet other people on the way, although that wasn't really much of an issue. So the whole kind of being in a big map and not coming across people, I hear that. We didn't play that game last night, so I didn't have any hands-on experience of it. But I'm thinking back to the way we used to play Battlefield, and divorcing the experience of Call of Duty from it. Well, that's kind of what we did before. So if that's what kind of people are complaining about, I'm kind of, to a degree, I am thinking, well, but that's the Battlefield. That's part of the Battlefield experience, rather than.
Yeah, we should give that a try and see if that works for us in this mode.
You're definitely right about that, and I think so. I never played 2 at all, and I started playing Battlefield with you at 3. Right, that's pretty much my entry point into to playing games with you guys. Full stop. Bar the odd little whatever here and there, and I know Dan made this point on Saturday, right? So DPC and Sinewave independently back then could regularly fill 2, maybe touching 3 squads, and certainly there were points where we had, DPC plus Tarzan plus Sinewave,
plus Tarzan,
plus Tarzan, and a Tarzan,
Squad in myself,
and we'd basically have half the server, right? So exactly as you described, Rocky, 100% we did that, and I'd be really interested. And we obviously can't tell this, but in that recollection, whether it was just like, well, we've got 2 squads, we've got Alpha and Bravo, and we've got 4 Siren Wavers, 4 DPCers, and we're going round to that cap 1 away from enemy spawn, because 1 we know will have superiority of force because we got 2 squads and we're all on comms, blah blah blah. So we know we could hold down something like that. That's definitely a thing that we did quite a lot of in 3, probably less of in 4, but we certainly still had, more active players who were playing the same game at the same time into 4 as well, right? So